Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing the Dark Souls franchise on the Ryzen 5 2400G with integrated Vega 11 graphics. I'll be doing Dark Souls 1, 2 and 3. To skip through those particular games, check the timestamps down in the description. So first of all, I'll be testing Dark Souls 1 using the DSFix mod, which made the game be able to be over 720p resolution, and we also got more options, for example unlocking the frame rate, which the game was capped at 30 frames per second, and we also have more options for ambient occlusion, anti-aliasing and all that kind of stuff. There will be a remaster coming this month, I think in a couple weeks from now. Once it releases, I'll be testing it on all my hardware. But for Dark Souls 1, I don't have good news. First of all, I'll show you 1080p with unlocked frame rates, ambient occlusion turned off, and anti-aliasing turned off as well. And so far, I have a lot of stutters, as you'll see in the frame time graph. There are some spikes in the frame times. There are some frame pacing problems. The game seems to be just loading some stuff in the background, but it only happened with this GPU so far. But yeah, this is a terrible PC port, so it must have some compatibility problem here, not 100% sure, but it only happened with this hardware. I never ran into this before with this game. And after the unlock frame rates part, I'll show you the same with the highest settings. It will be once again 1080p, but this time around there will be ambient occlusion and anti-aliasing enabled, and it will be capped at 30 frames per second. And you might think that that makes the game more stable. Unfortunately, this time around it doesn't make a difference. As you will see, there are still some frame pacing problems. There are some spikes in the frame time. So if you want to play this game and have this hardware, I'll just wait for the remastered version. Maybe that works a lot better. And I tested Blighttown, which is the most unoptimized place in the whole game. As you'll see, when I look into a certain part of the map, the frame rates will drop quite a bit. If I was at 60, I'll drop to 30. If I was at 30, I'll drop to 22. So yeah, this is one of those ridiculous areas of the game. And then I'll just be going into the forest, and I'll be using some pyromancy, since that effect usually hits the frame rate a lot, and I cannot really do anything about it. It happens on all GPUs that I tested. But yeah, I'll skip this one and wait for the remastered version. I'll talk to you again in the next game. Now I'm testing Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, and on this one I'll be using 1080p on almost the maximum settings. I'll be just turning off anti-aliasing, motion blur and camera motion blur in order to try and be as close as possible to 60 frames per second, and it's possible for the most part. I had some drops below 60 when there are some effects on screen. That's usually how the frame rate drops in this game. For example, you beat a boss, there's a lot of fire. At the start of the footage you'll see that there's a lot of effects on screen and I drop into the low 50s. Not really a big problem if you ask me, the game still feels smooth enough. But yeah, this one runs way better than Dark Souls 1, and I'll talk to you again in the next game. And finally, Dark Souls 3, I'll be testing 900p and 720p. That's because 1080p, even at the lowest settings, drops below 30 frames per second. So on 900p I'll be targeting 30 frames per second using pretty much medium settings. I just turn off motion blur, depth of field and anti-aliasing in order to have a more consistent frame rate. Then when I switch to 720p, I show you two things. First of all, I'll show you almost the maximum settings. I just turn off anti-aliasing. That one was over 30 frames per second pretty much all the time. There might be a couple drops here and there when there's a lot going on screen, a lot of effects, plus many enemies at the same time. And then I just lower everything to the minimum to see what frame rate we get. Maybe you want a smoother frame rate instead of better visuals. So with this one you should be going from 30 to 60 depending on what part of the game you are. Usually when there's a lot of effects it can drop into the mid 30s, but then in general gameplay it stays into the mid 40s to the upper 50s. So yeah, it's variable, but it's way smoother than the maximum settings. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Ooh.